The rise of the West has been intertwined with the rise of ideas. For the past 400 years, the West has seen the rise of many philosophical and political schools of thought, more than during any other time in history. Some of these were deeply destructive, while others became pillars of the successes Western societies enjoyed, particularly during the past 50 years. The 18th century saw the rise of Enlightenment thinking. The 19th century witnessed the rise of ideological clashes between traditionalists, anarchists, Marxists, and many more. The 20th century was mostly a clash between authoritarianism and liberal democracy, with liberal democracy eventually winning out. And the 21st century is what exactly? The 21st century is one of rapid innovation, economic and political change. But new ideas are not leading the way. Conversations about the future have little to no impact on policy. Visionary perspectives fall on deaf ears. It is as if the West is now enslaved by its own system, no longer caring and no longer capable of escaping the clutches of neoliberalism and technological progress. By neglecting the key pillars of historic success, it has unwittingly surrendered its future to dystopian forces. After 3 centuries of immense intellectual evolution and painful, hard-fought social and political progress, we now live in the age of apathy. Having looked at the 18th century in the previous episode, let us move on to the 19th century. The 19th century was the age of ever-looming unrest and talk of revolution. It was the time of clashes between Republicans and monarchists, of feminism versus patriarchy, of liberals versus conservatives, of Marxists versus capitalists, and of anarchists versus everyone. It was also the age of rapid European industrialization and continued destructive colonialism, leading to further social upheaval, unrest, and often injustice. But while these ideological conflicts were intertwined with violent confrontations, they were also accompanied by profound, complex, and important debates about the future of Western society. An entire intellectual culture emerged from these political differences, eventually proving crucial in shaping a diverse and pluralist political environment. The intense conflicts over the future of European societies crystallized what was at stake and forced political and economic leadership to justify their actions. This process was essential for expanding and solidifying liberal democracy. The seeds from previous movements, especially the Enlightenment, were turned into practical policies, eventually leading to a significant increase in general well-being amongst these populations. Life expectancy shot up dramatically. Basic workers' rights were implemented. Protection of children became politically relevant, and crucially, schooling and higher education bloomed. Schooling had already improved during the previous century, and literacy levels continued to rise. This had a mutually reinforcing dynamic with the political overthrow of the old aristocracy, providing space for newly educated masses, not only to contribute to scientific and social progress, but also to exert political and economic power. This allowed intellectual elites to leverage mass movements against traditional hierarchy in ways that would have been impossible at any other time in history. The late 19th century was a time in which Europe and North America became increasingly confident about their ability to shape their future through progress and innovation rather than traditional power politics. Societies were in awe of newly developed technologies, while simultaneously looking towards improving the very human systems that are always at the foundation of progress: civil society, the functioning of the state, and the moral principles guiding it all. Jules Verne and Mark Twain were 2 sides of the same coin. Having said that, war, civil and otherwise, continued to highlight serious cracks in the code. Similarly, slavery and oppression were still reminders of prevailing darkness. But all these challenges were debated, discussed, written about, and even though there weren't any obvious solutions, painstakingly slow progress was being made. Step by step, without a centralized plan, the West was edging closer to liberal democratic values. At the heart was this newfound psychology of confidence in human prowess, which manifested itself at both national and individual levels. Increasing literacy rates and general knowledge led to large-scale engagement never seen before. No longer would political and economic elites exist on another plane from ordinary man. They became intimately intertwined. An intellectual being under the patronage of some wealthy aristocracy behaves very differently than the one that can sell books to the masses and is thus beholden to no one in particular. And when those masses then become inspired to develop their own ideas, intellectual output turns into a virtuous cycle of fresh ideas and new opportunities. Rulers who did not understand what was happening, such as Emperor William II or Tsar Nicholas II, would eventually lose power. Those who did understand had to adjust. With the majority of population able to read newspapers and discuss matters of state, the era of absolute monarchies had ended, and the dawn of democracy had arrived. By the turn of the century, the West was optimistic, vibrant, and dynamic. The ability to transform society into something better, partially due to science and partially due to mass education, meant that people could be hopeful about tomorrow. The present was better than the past, and the future promised to be better than the present. Some would resort to violent revolution, others to more incremental progress, and there was no consensus on what the destination was. Even though it is easy to argue with the benefit of hindsight, in such an era of mass mobilization and big ideas, authoritarian regimes, including communists or fascist ones, were ultimately doomed to fail. In the long run, they simply could not cope with the chaos of pluralistic societies and would be outcompeted by liberal systems. The plurality of thoughts, that active intellectual conflict carried by millions of ordinary citizens pressuring the establishment, was exactly what would lead to liberal democracy as the most successful social experiment the world had ever known. The power of liberal political ideology had been consolidated.